All right, let's talk about one of the toughest history papers out there, Germany, 1890 to 1945. My goal today is simple, to give you a clear, actionable game plan so you can walk into that exam feeling confident and walk out knowing you did great. So here's the big question, isn't it? You're looking at 55 years of incredibly complex German history. Political chaos, economic disasters, massive social change. It feels like a mountain to climb, for sure. But what if you had a strategy, a step-by-step guide for every single question? Well, that's exactly what we're going to build right now.
And here's our plan of attack. First up, we're going to survey the landscape and know your battlefield. Then, we'll tackle what I call the interpretation gauntlet. After that, we'll focus on scoring easy points to build up some momentum before we face the final boss, that huge 12-mark question. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into your winning strategy.
Okay, first things first. Before you can even think about answering a question, you've got to know the terrain. This whole exam paper is built around 3 distinct but very connected periods of German history. Getting these down is your foundation. So the course is broken down into these 3 main chunks, but here's the secret. There's a single, powerful theme that links them all together. Seriously, look closer. From the Kaiser, through the Weimar Republic, all the way to the Nazi regime, the exam is always focused on one thing. How did the government's actions affect the lives of ordinary German people? If you keep that idea in your head, it'll help you link everything together and make your arguments so much stronger. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the questions. The first 3 are basically a set. They all revolve around 2 historical interpretations they give you. Now, they look similar, but they're testing very, very different skills. If you can master the difference between them, you are well on your way. Question 1, super straightforward. It's a 4-mark question, and you really shouldn't spend more than 5 minutes on it. The keyword here is how. Your job is just to read the 2 interpretations and explain how their content is different. You're only focused on what each author is actually saying. That's it. And now we move on to question 2. Again, 4 marks, about 5 minutes. But look, the keyword has changed from how to why. This is a totally different beast. This isn't about what the text says, it's about the context behind it. Here, you have to use your own knowledge to think about the authors. Who were they? What was their angle? Why might they have written this specific thing? It's all about the history behind the words, not just the words themselves. So, this is absolutely crucial. Do not mix these 2 up. It is the single most common mistake people make. Question 1 is all about content, what is literally written on the page. Question 2 is all about context, the reasons why the author might have that point of view. Think of it like this. One's the text, the other's the subtext. This brings us to question 3. It builds on the first 2, and it's the big one in this section, worth a solid 8 marks. You'll want to give yourself about 10 minutes for this one. The question's going to ask which interpretation you find more convincing, and this is your chance to shine and use your own historical knowledge to be the judge. And here is the perfect structure for your answer. It's a simple 3-paragraph plan, easy to remember. In paragraph 1, you're going to analyze interpretation A. Use your own knowledge to talk about its strengths, but also its weaknesses. Then, in paragraph 2, you do the exact same thing for interpretation B. Finally, paragraph 3 is where you make your judgment. You decide which one is more convincing and explain why. And here's a pro tip. The best answers might argue that, hey, interpretation A is really convincing on this point, but B is more convincing over here. It shows you're thinking like a real historian. Okay, so you've made it through the interpretation gauntlet. The good news is the paper now gives you a chance to score some more straightforward marks. Questions 4 and 5 are your bread and butter. You get these right, and you're building an amazing foundation for a top grade. Question 4 is what I like to call a quick win. It's a simple describe question, worth 4 marks, and it's probably the easiest one on the entire paper. The strategy couldn't be simpler. You've got 5 minutes to describe 2 things. So you're going to write 2 peel paragraphs. That's point, evidence, explain, and link. Make your point, back it up with a fact, explain it, and link back to the question. 1 paragraph for each problem. Don't overthink it. Just lay out your knowledge clearly and move right on. Next up, question 5. This one's an 8-marker, so it's a step up in detail. It will usually ask you to explain something like, in what ways? Here is your tactical breakdown. You've got 10 minutes. Your goal is to explain 3 different points, so you should be aiming for 3 solid peel paragraphs. 2 really detailed ones might work in a pinch, but the absolute golden rule, the key tip, is this. Start each of your paragraphs using the exact wording from the question. Trust me, this forces you to stay laser-focused and guarantees you're answering exactly what they've asked.
And now we've arrived at the end of the paper. Question 6. This is it, the final boss. It's the most heavily weighted question in this section, worth a massive 12 marks. This is where the top grades are really won or lost.
The format is always the same. It'll give you a historical event or outcome and then present you with two different reasons. Let's call them factor X and factor Y. Your entire job is to argue which one was more important. See that word, more? It's a direct comparison. And this brings us to the golden rule for this question. This is non-negotiable. You must only talk about the two factors the question gives you. Do not be tempted to bring in a third reason, even if you think it's a really good one. The examiners are testing your ability to compare X and Y, not your ability to list everything you know about the topic. Stick to the script.
So how do you do it? Here's your 15-minute plan. In your first paragraph, you use Peel to explain why factor X was important. In the second paragraph, you do the exact same thing for factor Y, but it's that third paragraph. That's the money paragraph. That's your judgment. You have to explicitly state which factor was more important, and, this is the key, explain why it was more significant in comparison to the other one. That direct comparison is what gets you into the top mark band.
So there we have it. We've broken down the entire paper, from the core content all the way to that big 12-mark question at the end. And what have we seen? We've seen that for every single question, there is a clear, repeatable structure that you can use to your advantage. And that really brings us to the final, most important takeaway from this whole playbook. Of course, knowing the history is essential, but knowledge by itself isn't enough. The real secret to a top score is combining that knowledge with a bulletproof structure for every single question. It turns this big, scary exam into a clear, manageable series of steps. So I'll leave you with a thought. Is your biggest challenge really mastering 55 years of history, or is it mastering the structure of just 6 questions? Think about it.